Hello YouTube and welcome back to Be a Loser. As we've discovered through this series, a low carbohydrate diet really isn't anything new. People have known for centuries that if you want to lose weight, you reduce carbohydrates. And the primary driving force behind obesity are diets rich in refined carbohydrates. In fact, as far back as 1825, a textbook was written by Jean-Antoine Briat-Savarin known as The Physiology of Taste, in which he stated, "The second of the chief causes of obesity is the floury and starchy substances which man makes the prime ingredients of his daily nourishment." Pretty clear right there. But there are volumes of writings on that same subject. And yet, as we've also seen, along came Ancel Keys and Senator George McGovern in the 1960s and threw all of that out the window. But there were still many who fought the diet hard hypothesis and wrote about it in books. And it all led to one of the biggest diet revolutions we've had in a while, with Dr. Robert Atkins and his famous diet. But is the Atkins diet the same as LCHF? Well, let's once more take a walk through history to answer just that. Even though the anti-fat movement was well underway in the 1960s, there were still those who were very vocally and adamantly standing against it. Dr. Erwin Stillman was one such individual. In 1967, he wrote the book, The Doctor's Quick Weight Loss Diet. This book sold 2.5 million copies, and this diet was known as the Stillman diet. The diet recommended high protein intake and low carbohydrate intake. Stillman's reasoning behind this was that because protein required extra energy to metabolize, then eating more of it should promote weight loss. This effect is known as the thermic effect of food. Using this diet himself, Dr. Stillman lost 50 pounds by eating a diet consisting of 90% protein. Now that sounds like an insanely enormous amount of protein to me, but Dr. Stillman successfully treated 10,000 overweight patients using this diet. This was most likely the start of the low-carb revolution and paved the way for Dr. Atkins. Dr. Robert Atkins opened a cardiology practice in 1960 in New York City. Atkins was overweight and was greatly influenced by much of the low-carb literature of the past. He implemented those dietary changes in his life and found that they worked quite well. He didn't count calories as everyone was being told to do and lost his extra weight anyway. This worked so well, in fact, that he began prescribing it to his patients and in 1972 published his book, Dr. Atkins' Diet Revolution. While Dr. Atkins was the most popular and well-known of these low-carb advocates, there were many others. Dr. Richard Bernstein opened a clinic in 1983 to treat diabetics with a low-carb diet. He then published a book titled Dr. Bernstein's Diabetes Solution. In 1993, a research biologist, Dr. Richard Heller, published a book titled The Carbohydrates Addict's Diet. And Dr. Atkins himself reworked and republished his book in 1992 and 1999 as Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution. All these books sold multiple millions of copies. The Atkins craze was in full swing now. But we must remember that all during this time, the medical community was firmly rooted in the low-fat diet. There wasn't much evidence to support any of that, but as we've seen previously, none was really needed to force mainstream thinking in that direction. And because all of the experts were on that bandwagon, you had huge medical associations like the AHA and AMA denouncing these new low-carb diets as fad diets. Boy, does that sound familiar. And at the same time, the AHA admitted that there was no long-term proof of the effectiveness of their heart-healthy diet, and that the Atkins diet had superior effects on cholesterol levels, not to mention faster initial weight loss. But the AHA decided without evidence, naturally, that this Atkins diet might increase the rate at which plaque formed in the arteries, a phenomenon known as atherogenesis. Of course, while they were pointing the finger at the Atkins diet as unhealthy, they were moving focus away from the raging obesity epidemic that was occurring during the age of their own recommended heart-healthy diet. Studies were undertaken to show that the Atkins diet was evil, and the AHA recommended diet was the way to go for health. In 2007, a study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association comparing 4 different popular weight loss plans: Standard AHA, Zone, Ornish, a very low-fat diet, and Atkins. And the winner by TKO was, of course, Atkins. It wasn't even close. Not only was weight loss better, but blood pressure and cholesterol levels were better as well. In 2008, another study was published in the New England Journal of Medicine comparing 3 diets: the AHA low-fat diet, the Mediterranean diet, and of course, Atkins. The Mediterranean diet did fairly well, if not quite as well as Atkins, for weight loss. But the AHA diet was clearly shown to be ineffective, even while doctors everywhere were backing it. And once again, it wasn't just weight loss that was exceptional on Atkins. HbA1c levels, a marker of average blood sugar, dropped by 0.9%. That's obviously important to diabetics and pre-diabetics, and is almost as powerful as medications that control those levels. Additionally, inflammation, which is measured by an HS-CRP test, was reduced the most on Atkins. What a powerhouse! And while these studies were designed to tarnish the Atkins diet's good name, instead it brought it even more into the mainstream. Okay, so what about weight loss maintenance? Well, a study in 2010, published once more in the NEJM, took a look at that. 773 patients who had lost 10% of their body weight were randomized into 4 groups based on either high or low protein levels and high or low GI levels. 3 groups started regaining weight immediately. Which group didn't regain the weight, you ask? Well, the low GI, high protein group, of course. Hello, Dr. Atkins. In 2012, Dr. David Ludwig published a study in the JAMA, also looking at weight loss maintenance. He looked at decreases in TEE, which, as we remember, indicates a slowdown of the metabolism. And he determined that it was the low-fat diet that caused the greatest decrease in metabolism. And which one caused the least decrease? Well, naturally, the very low-carb diet. This diet keeps the metabolism high and promotes weight loss. At this time, refined carbs were being looked at more closely. It's well known that there are satiety cues, or feelings of fullness, associated with protein and fat. These are, of course, controlled by hormones, as is everything in the body. Ingesting fats or proteins signal these hormones to tell you that you're full. But refined carbohydrates do not activate any of these hormones. So there's a feeling that you can become addicted to these. Think about foods that are considered addictive: cake, candy, ice cream, bread, chips, refined. And what about comfort foods here in the States? Mac and cheese, pasta, ice cream, of course. Because our bodies don't signal us to feel full when we eat these types of foods, we tend to overconsume them or become addicted to them. Even at the end of a big meal, when you felt completely stuffed, I think you might have room for that one scoop of ice cream. In 2005, an article was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine about a very low-carb diet with no caloric restrictions, reducing appetite and body weight. To quote, "When we took away the carbohydrates, the patients spontaneously reduced their daily energy consumption by 1,000 calories per day. Additionally, insulin levels dropped and insulin sensitivity was restored." Even with all this, there were and are those who point out supposed unhealthy aspects of this type of diet, like the initial weight loss is water weight. Well, yeah, is that bad? Insulin causes kidneys to retain sodium. So a diet that reduces insulin will cause the kidneys to release excess water and salt. What's the problem there? This reduction of retained salt also leads to a reduction in blood pressure. I'm not seeing a problem there either. So, experts point out that low-carb diets are not balanced nutritionally, or that high levels of ingested protein are bad for the kidneys. Now, while that last one may be on point for anyone suffering from kidney problems, A 2012 study showed that there were no adverse effects of this diet on healthy obese patients. For more on why all of these misconceptions are simply off base, be sure to watch my Misconceptions of LCHF videos. Remember, there are 2 parts because people have so many misconceptions about it. So all of this data seemed to definitively show that there was finally a diet for permanent, long-term weight loss with no ill effects. This, however, was not to be. In 2010, a long-term study did not support this conclusion. There was little difference in long-term weight loss for 307 patients in a low-carb group. The results of this experiment were published in the book Rethinking Thin by Gina Kolata. Both the low-fat group and Atkins group initially lost weight, but then subsequently put it back on. In follow-up studies, it was shown that weight was regained starting at the 12-month mark in all weight loss groups. The issue long-term in many of these diets is compliance. No matter the diet, be it Atkins or low-fat, 40% of patients abandon it by the 1-year mark. We'll cover why in depth in a future video. The effect of this was that the Atkins diet was shelved and just another fad diet. The company Atkins Nutritionals, which was founded in 1989, declared bankruptcy. So what was the real problem with this seemingly powerful diet? Insulin. Yep, it all comes back to insulin. As we've discussed, carbs are the main macronutrient that's focused on by Atkins as well as LCHF. They have the greatest impact on blood sugar levels. And most people assume that blood sugar and blood insulin are closely related. But as we've seen, they're not. Only 23% of the blood sugar response determines how high the insulin levels respond. That means that 77% of the insulin release is not associated with the blood sugars. Insulin drives weight gain. The dieters were assuming that the insulin and sugar responses would be the same, and so we're targeting low GI foods. But clearly you can lower blood glucose without lowering insulin. And this is what led to the discovery of the insulin index of foods in 1997. We've discussed that a bit, and we'll focus more on it in the future video. But the takeaway here is that there are many things that control insulin secretion. One such controller is the incretin effect. This effect is fairly complex and warrants its own video moving forward. There's also a correlation between protein consumption and insulin levels, as well as, wait for it, sugar substitutes, also known as non-nutritive sweeteners. Again, more on that soon. But we now see that there were a lot of complex processes occurring that ultimately undermined the Atkins revolution. Since carbohydrates are not the only stimulus to insulin secretion, or even the main stimulus for that matter, then restricting only carbs may not have as big an effect as we would hope. And so this brings us back to the question posed at the beginning of the video. Are Atkins and LCHF the same thing? Well, both are under the umbrella of low-carb diets. Atkins is a high-protein diet, while LCHF is most definitely moderate protein. So no, LCHF and Atkins are not the same thing. And hopefully the newly resurging Atkins diet will take note of its previous missteps. And we certainly will do that in our upcoming videos as we look closer at protein in red meat, dairy, sugar substitutes, fruit, sugars, and of course, fat. There's a world of information and knowledge yet to be explored. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get it all. And remember to click the bell to enable alerts so that you don't miss any videos when they post. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Be a Loser Today. And you can find all of our videos and recipes, as well as informational links on our website, bealoser.today. And if you like this video or any of our videos, please consider clicking the like button, as it does help out the channel. In the meantime, you can click here to watch our History of the American Diet video, or click here for the LCHF Misconceptions video. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep being a loser.